Solomon the Gravedigger, 12 sinister plantation owners exposed and buried alive in cursed graves. In the haunted heart of Willow Creek, where shadows whispered secrets and the air hung heavy with dread, Solomon Jones, the solitary gravedigger, toiled in the fading light of summer. The town was on edge. Missing persons posters fluttered on peeling walls, their faces fading like the laughter that once filled this place. Solomon, chisel in hand, could feel the chill in his bones. Something wicked was brewing. He dug deeper, each thrust of the shovel clawing at the earth beneath him, feeling the air thicken with unholy tension as darkness approached. He remembered his mother's hushed words about the 12 plantation owners, the mighty gentry who ruled the town with an iron fist, their wealth built on blood and misery. People said they had made deals with forces unseen, and now those very forces were reclaiming what the gentry owed. With every grave he turned, every headstone he uncovered, Solomon felt the pressure grow, like a twisted hand squeezing the very life from Willow Creek. His closest friend, Marcus, stumbled onto the site one humid evening. His eyes, wide and wild, flickered with madness. "Solomon, I saw them! Figures moving through the mist! They wore rags, the kind your ancestors would have known, doomed souls!" Instead of the comfort of camaraderie, dread clawed at Solomon's heart. They were not just frantic whispers. This was real, and as the moon loomed, the veil between the living and the damned thinned. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The cold wind picked up, carrying the scent of damp earth and decay as Solomon returned to work. Sweat trickled down his spine as he plunged the shovel into the ground, unease coiling around his gut. The disappearances were not random. His heart raced with each unearthed treasure, a pocket watch, a battered diary, the echoes of lives intertwined with the elite's sinister past. And then it happened. A tremor rocked the earth beneath his feet. Shadows twisted, revealing broken specters clinging to the edges of reality. Solomon's breath caught in his throat. Among the remnants of the earth, he seized an old locket. He opened it, and his heart sank. There, smiling back at him, was a picture of his daughter, Grace, the embodiment of his regrets. The gnawing fear twisted sharper. She could be next, lost to the same darkness that snatched away the townsfolk. Now he stood on the precipice of the abyss, knowing that the 12 plantation owners were not safe in their palatial homes. They were hiding something dark, insidious, that stained the very roots of Willow Creek. Goosebumps prickled along his arms as the realization washed over him. He would have to confront them, step into their lair, and unearth the secrets buried alongside the graves of the forgotten. The cemetery was no longer just a resting place. It was a battleground, a realm where justice yearned to rise from its grave. As he stepped deeper into the suffocating shadows, Solomon's pulse thundered in his ears. Panic clawed at him, but so did determination. Would he truly unearth the terror that awaited? Would the truth bury him alive along with everything he dared to love? A shiver ran through him, the mist swirling like a living thing, as the clock ticked ominously. The fight had only just begun. Solomon took a breath, steeling himself against the anticipation that churned within. Each step down the overgrown path toward the plantation felt like an ascent into a nightmare yet to be dreamed. The gnarled trees reached towards him like skeletal hands, threatening to claim him in their withering grasp. An owl hooted mournfully, a chilling reminder of what lurked in the shadows. As he neared the grand estate, a low rumble echoed from its depths. The oppressive weight of the plantation's history pressed against him, squeezing out all traces of warmth. Wall to wall, the imposing structure stood defiant against the encroaching night, yet it flickered with a faint, sickly blue light filtering from the basement windows. Solomon's heart raced. What lay beneath this monstrous veneer? He had heard the rumors, the whispers of unspeakable acts and deals forged in darkness. His mother's voice echoed in his mind. They trade in blood. What if he was walking into a trap? A reckoning set by the very ones he sought to confront. He reached the door, and the creaking wood felt like an ancient beast waking from slumber. Hesitating, he pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. His eyes strained to adjust, catching glimpses of relics from a forgotten era. Portrait frames splattered, moth-eaten drapes that fluttered like ghosts. He moved further, the echoes of his footfalls swallowed by the surrounding gloom. Suddenly, a noise, shuffling, low and mournful. Solomon froze, his breath suspended. He turned toward the basement door, the source of the sound. It rattled as if something was behind it, attempting to escape the confines of its prison. "Hello?" he called, his voice wavering and thin. Silence responded. Then, from the corner of his eye, shadows shifted. Faces emerged, ghastly and pale, their mouths twisted in unheard screams. The specters from Marcus's visions had crossed into his reality. Fear gripped him like ice, but fury ignited somewhere deep inside. "The plantation owners," he whispered, piecing together the dread. They were holding on to their secrets, using the spirit's despair to weave a shield around their vile actions. But what price did they pay to keep the specters at bay? He felt an echo of their binding, as though their anguish pulsated through the walls. He approached the basement door, which now seemed to throb with each pulse of a malign heartbeat. Solomon needed answers. He needed justice. The thought of grace anchored him, compelling him forward. He turned the knob, and the door swung open with a tortured screech. Descending into darkness, he descended into the unknown. The air grew colder, wrapping around him like a vice. He stepped cautiously, the ground beneath him damp and breathing. Then a sudden flicker of light caught his attention. It emanated from a crude altar at the center of the room. Symbols carved into stone, surrounded by jars filled with darkened liquid. And there they were, the figures, rags hanging from skeletal forms, bound by chains that glistened in the dim light. Their eyes, once filled with despair, flickered with purpose. "Free us," they rasped in haggard tones, the words drawing from deep within their chests. Solomon's pulse quickened. Free them? Free them from the plantation owners, or from their own cursed existence? The question hung in the air, dripping with foreboding. Those shackled by the past stared into his soul, urging him to decide. He knew he had to choose. What lay before him was beyond justice. It was about survival. Could he free the wretched souls without sealing his own fate and that of Grace? A distant scream echoed through the plantation, and Solomon's heart sank. The clock was ticking. "Help us," the figures begged again, urgency creeping into their pleas. Would he heed their call, or would it lead him straight into the jaws of the abyss? Panic surged within him, twisting his stomach into knots. He had to move, and fast. The estate was alive with darkness, and the truth was waiting, lurking just beyond the veil. As he took a step forward, the ground trembled, and a voice within the shadows hissed, "You cannot save them, unless you destroy us first." What gruesome fate awaited him if he dared to proceed? Only one thing was certain: the real terror was yet to come. Solomon's mind raced as he stood before the altar, the broken spirits pleading with hollow eyes. He could feel the icy grip of fear tighten around his heart. The darkness in the basement seemed to throb, pulsing with a life of its own. He clenched his fists, trying to sort through the chaos inside. "Free us," they urged again, their voices overlapping like a chorus of despair. Their chains rattled softly, each sound echoing like a taunt in the silence. Solomon could see the sharp glimmer of their restraints, and with each rattling clink his stomach twisted tighter. He could destroy them, the plantation owners, the source of the rot, but at what cost? What if the spirits, in their wretchedness, only sought to replace one tyranny with another? He could feel their intent drag him down, pulling at his resolve. "Make them pay!" a spirit suddenly howled, its voice like glass shattering in the night. "Blood for blood!" The echo sent shivers down Solomon's spine. Then came a low growl from beyond the shadows, deeper than the whispers of the wretched. He turned, the hairs on the back of his neck standing up. The trembling ground was no longer just the consequence of his own fear. Something awakened in the pit, something dark and hungry. "Time is running out," it hissed. Panic ignited within him, suffocating any lingering sense of detachment. Who was he? Just a man, in a lost fight against the tides of fate? With shaky hands, he stepped closer to the altar. The light flickered, and he felt as if the very walls were closing in. "What do I do?" he demanded, looking at the spirits. They stared back, their eyes resembling a depths of despair, a mirror of his own fear. "Release us," one of them pleaded, the sorrowful melody of its voice slicing through his resolve. Solomon fought back the impulse to yield. He couldn't be tricked. But another scream broke through the basement, weaving through the air and piercing his thoughts. This one was familiar, a sharp cry filled with terror. "Grace!" His breath hitched. He had to act, but how? He could feel the weight of the chains on the spirits around him, and with every second, Grace's safety slipped further away. "Destroy the altar!" a spirit shrieked, its chains rattling in desperation. "It binds them! Tear it apart!" Grabbing a jagged piece of stone from the floor, Solomon raised it above the altar, the breeze of malevolent energy swirling around him. This was it. The choice hung heavy in the air, the tension thickening. Suddenly, darkness erupted. Shadows lunged from every corner, swirling like a deadly storm, as the plantation itself seemed to scream. The spectral figures writhed, battling unseen forces, their chains singing a haunting hymn of anguish and rage. "Do it! Free us!" they roared in unison, their voices a crescendo of desperation that drowned out his own fear. With one furious swing, Solomon smashed the stone against the altar. A deafening crack resonated like thunder, shaking the very foundation of the plantation. For a heart-stopping moment, silence fell. Then the world exploded into chaos. The walls began to quiver, and an unholy rage of winds clawed at his mind. The shadows twisted violently, shrieking as they were drawn to the altar's destruction, while the spirits surged with newfound vigor. But as the air crackled with energy, Solomon's heart sank. He looked around, realizing their chains were stretching, turning into ethereal tendrils that reached for him. And throughout the tumult, he heard it again, a scream, unmistakable and chilling. "Grace!" And there, through the raging darkness, a figure emerged from the shadows. Was it her, or something else? The choice now blazed before him. Would he save her, or would the very act of freeing the damned seal his fate in the darkness forever? "Get out!" the spirits screamed as they surged towards him, teeth bared, each pulling him further away, into their nightmarish grip. Could there be a redemption in his choice, or would he plunge into a torment of blood and shadows? The nightmare was just beginning, and Solomon was caught squarely in its web. What new horrors awaited him as he faced the choice between life, death, and the unrelenting darkness? The roar of chaos faded into a haunting silence, leaving only the quickening beat of Solomon's heart. A shimmer of recognition flickered within the shadows. The figure emerging was unmistakably Grace. Her face contorted in terror, eyes wide, pleading for help he couldn't ignore. "Stay back!" he shouted, instinctively raising the jagged stone for defense, as if it could shield them from the grasping shadows. But it was a fruitless gesture. The shadows writhed closer, tendrils extending toward him, the palpable evil thickening around them. "Help me, Solomon!" Grace cried, her voice breaking. "Please!" He wanted to run, to break away from the altar's destruction and its consequences, but the moans of the spirits wrapped around him, binding him in place, a web woven from despair. Chains rattled like ominous wind chimes, and with each shrill sound he felt himself slipping. The specters surged, their faces twisted in anguish as they reached for him with desperate hands. "You have to help us! You can't leave us behind!" The cacophony was deafening. They were not simply demanding liberation, they were clamoring for retribution. His eyes darted back to Grace, her image flickering like a candle in the wind, moments from being extinguished. Every instinct told him to run to her, to brush aside the shadows, to rescue her from the encroaching nightmare. But the sinister mass from the altar screamed volumes, their collective fury both terrifying and intoxicating. "Blood for blood," echoed within his mind, a mantra that twisted like a knife, sharp and unyielding. Was he really about to condemn himself to this darkness for her? If he took another step towards her, would he fall into that wretched void? "Solomon!" Her voice snapped like a twig underfoot, raw and filled with dread. "They're lying! Don't listen to them!" In that flicker of urgency, he understood. The wretched spirits were weaving a tale, a sinister trap masked as hope. The threads of despair wrapped around him, slick and slippery. A flash of realization surged through him. "What do you want?" he yelled into the darkness. "What will you give me?" "Freedom," the chorus answered. "We will guide you to vengeance, to justice." But Grace's voice broke through again, pleading with an urgency that pulled his heart. "No, they will turn you against your own. They will consume you, Solomon. Don't let their lies bind you." The shadows swirled furiously, snapping at his ankles, whispering the promises of revenge, of power that could shake the very roots of the plantation. Solomon felt the weight of the world upon him, caught between two worlds, the tortured souls eager for blood, and his own flesh and blood crying out for salvation. The growing storm of shadows lunged hungrily. Around him, Let them go! Kill the living! Only then will you be free!" A scream erupted from Grace, one ratcheted with despair. "Solomon!" In that moment, the choice was laid bare. His instincts wrestled with his heart. Should he succumb to the ghost's promises to secure power with no regards? Or should he push against the tide, fight for grace, for the light? "Choose!" the spirits shrieked, their chains rattling like thunder, inching closer with incipient hunger. With sheer determination, he pivoted toward Grace, refusing to yield. "I won't let them win! Not you, not anyone!" But even as he spoke, flashes of wicked laughter crackled through the darkness. Determined, he ran towards her, but the shadows erupted with rage, blocking his path like an impenetrable wall. Suddenly, everything exploded into blinding light, piercing through the darkness, illuminating sinister faces in whispered agony. Were they finally free, or only stirring the beasts waiting to devour? And then, silence. Solomon felt weightlessness, a sensation as if time had paused. But in the stillness, he sensed the unmistakable weight of eyes upon him, hungry, fevered, demanding. "Your choice must be made, Solomon, but beware, the darkness hungers still." As an echo filled the space, another scream pierced the gloom, a voice he could hardly recognize. What awaited them behind the blinding veil, and would the shadows finally claim their due? Light flickered and collapsed like a dying star, but with the sudden brightness, the shadows faded only reluctantly. Solomon stood frozen, a puppet caught mid-performance. The faces of the wretched hovered just beyond the veil, waiting. Their expressions no longer just twisted pain, but a gathering storm of anger and betrayal. "What have you done?" he whispered to the void, his voice skimming the surface of horror. "Everything," a malevolent whisper crept back, resonating through the air, curling around him like smoke. "You have severed the ties. Now you must choose." The ground beneath him pulsed with energy, a heartbeat echoing in the stillness. The chaos outside felt farther away, an indistinct memory swallowed by the presence of those who lingered. The urge to flee was a wild animal tugging at his insides, but the shadows remained, haunting him like sentinels. He turned frantically, hoping to catch sight of Grace, to rescue her. But the blinding light had consumed her too. It was as if she were snatched back by the deeper darkness, like a whisper swallowed by the wind. "Grace!" Panic surged through him, clawing at his throat. He stumbled backward, colliding into a hard surface, an ancient gravestone, cracked from years of neglect. The cold, merciless stone was a reminder of the stakes. "Will you barter your soul?" the shadows taunted. "Will you face the wrath of the living in search of vengeance?" Desperation clawed at him with razor nails. The weight of the ghosts pressed down, a tidal force pulling him into the depths of despair. Each anguished wail crested and fell, unfurling in waves around him. "Stop! I want no part of your madness!" he yelled. But it felt like casting a pebble into the ocean, a fruitless effort. The shadows danced closer, flickering with life, seductive and consuming. "Let her go!" "Why would we?" A voice coiled around his legs, threatening to pull him under. "She does not belong to you. Would you let the living grow without your blood on their hands? Will you abandon your own? Kill them before they kill you." The specters encircled him, their hands reaching out, not for mercy, but for his consent, for his allegiance to the bloodshed they craved. The storm of life and death merged, and Solomon felt his sanity teetering on the brink of madness. Beneath the chaos, he recalled the plantation's deepest roots, the greed, the sorrow, and the horrors laid bare. Should he unleash these spirits of darkness to claim vengeance on their behalf? Would his thirst for justice outbalance the weight of their sins? Solomon! Grace's voice broke through, a splinter of hope in a realm of despair. But it was dimming, growing weaker. The shadows vibrated with glee, sensing his hesitation, their whispers growing louder, feeding off his indecision. Your choice, Solomon. Stand tall with us and shatter the chains that bind them, or know the despair of loss. Without warning, the ground beneath him erupted, tendrils of dark energy lifting him off his feet. The screaming souls pulled him toward a gaping maw beneath the gravestone, promising freedom and vengeance. His pulse thundered in his ears. Suddenly, the light flared again, splitting the shadows like a jagged knife. Solomon seized the moment, breaking free from their grasp. He lunged, but could barely see with tears of fear and frustration blinding him. "Go to her!" a voice boomed from the abyss, the rage swelling around him. "But it will cost you dearly." As the shadows screamed, a curtain of night began to close. He swayed between the tangible world and the suffocating void. Solomon took a breath, steeling himself against the onslaught of fear. With trembling resolve, he made his decision. I'll find Grace and face whatever waits for me. But as he plunged forward, the earth split open, screeching with ancient pain, swallowing the remnants of his courage whole. What price would he pay to reclaim the soul of the one he loved? And would he emerge unscathed, or would the shadows claim him forever? The earth quaked beneath Solomon, its shrieking protest echoing in his bones. Fear prickled at his skin like 1,000 angry ants. The shadows writhed around him, a dark sea rising, eager to pull him under. Each flicker of light painted grotesque images on their faces, twisting sorrow into rage. They clamored for his decision, their voices blurring into a frenzied symphony of despair. He pushed through the darkness, driven by the memory of Grace, her laugh like sunlight. "I'm coming, Grace!" he shouted, but his words felt hollow, swallowed by the shadows. He stumbled over the rough ground, the crumbled gravestones jutting like broken bones. Cold sweat trickled down his back, a chilling reminder of what lay ahead. What had he unleashed? Each step felt heavier, weighed down by remorse, as if the very ground wanted him to turn back. The whispers intensified, a cacophony that threatened to unravel his mind. "Join us, Solomon. Embrace the reckoning. They wronged us. Let us make them pay." Ahead, a shimmer caught his eye, an ethereal light beyond the grasping shadows. Solomon sprinted towards it, his heart pounding like a war drum. This light beckoned with the promise of hope, but darkness clung like an old friend, wrapping around him, pulling at his resolve. He burst through the veil of shadows, gasping as the light enveloped him in warmth. It was a garden, or at least it had been. Now it was a graveyard of memories, an unsettling beauty, with flowers frozen in bloom, colors vibrant against the encroaching decay. He felt both lost and found, hovering between realities. "Grace!" he shouted again, voice breaking as he scanned the garden. But it was empty, the silence echoing back in cruel mockery. Each creak of the old trees sent shivers rippling through him. Their branches twisted like skeletal fingers, seeming to beckon him deeper into the gloom. The flickering light ebbed, dwindling as shadows seeped in. "You're too late," the whispering shadows curled around him, chilling him to the bone. "Your love is lost, just like the rest. End the living, sooner or later." "No!" he screamed, desperation gripping his throat. The pain of wanting to protect Grace tightened around his heart like a vice. His eyes darted to the gravestones marking the corners of the garden, and he recognized the names. Each one bore the mark of history's injustices. Plantation owners, their crimes etched in stone, and stone only by time. They had oppressed, misused, destroyed. This was their punishment, their penance, forever haunting this land. But what of Grace? What of his love? "Do you seek vengeance?" the shadows hissed again, coiling tighter, almost pleading now. "Join us in reclaiming your birthright. Become who you were meant to be." Solomon shuddered, visions of blood and retribution flashing before him. Power surged in the darkness, tempting him with promises of control, of wrath fulfilled. But then flickers of Grace's laughter filled his mind, awakening a love that pulsed defiantly against the sea of shadows. "No!" he cried again, pulling against the tide of despair. "I will not. If I must face the living, so be it. I will save her." In that moment of clarity, the garden trembled, light spilling from the earth, as if the ground itself breathed a sigh of relief. The shadows shrieked, retreating like a tide pulled away from the shore, but only for a heartbeat. The decision was made, yet the cost remained unclear. Solomon felt the potent energy swirling. Would it bite back? Would the living suffer because of his choice? The ground beneath him pulsated with anticipation. Suddenly, from the heart of the garden, a figure emerged, a shape draped in shadows, echoing the whispers of agony and rage. Solomon froze, breath hitching. Was this his test? Would he face the manifestation of all his fears? "Come to claim what is rightfully yours, Solomon?" it taunted, voice a twisted mockery of Grace's. "Dare you decide what happens next?" His pulse thundered, heart racing as dread coiled tight. Fear twisted in his gut. He took a step back, but there was no escape now. He had crossed a threshold. "Who are you?" he demanded, filled with defiance. The figure grinned. A crack split its shadowy face, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "I am your reckoning. You chose to be a savior, but at what cost?" As the figure advanced, Solomon braced himself for a confrontation that could tear him apart, body and soul. Dark clouds gathered as the whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar. Would Solomon's courage prevail, or would he be swallowed whole by the darkness he had awakened? The question lingered in the air, thick as the dread closing in around him. The figure loomed closer, shadows pulsating around it, coiling like snakes ready to strike. Solomon's heart raced louder, the relentless thump drowning out the cries around him. He felt trapped, cornered by the remnants of the past manifesting before him. The air thickened, suffocating him with the weight of their hatred. "Do you see?" the creature hissed, its breath like icy wind. "Their sins live on, forcing us to remain." "Shut up!" Solomon shouted, defiance spilling over the fear. "You're not them. I won't let their darkness consume me." A roar erupted from the shadows, sounding almost human, but twisted, like the echoes of lost souls calling for revenge. Solomon staggered back, his resolve trembling like fragile glass. He could feel the pull of their vengeance, the allure of a power that promised to obliterate the pain he felt for Grace. Power, the figure rasped, stretching its arms. Power, Solomon, to protect those you love, to punish the living for the dead. It is all within your grasp. No, he cried, voice cracking as the garden swelled with the cries of the damned, each note clawing at his sanity. I will not be an executioner. I'll find another way to save her. In his heart, fear grappled with hope. Images of Grace flashed. It was the warmth in her eyes, the way she danced in rain, carefree and radiant. He couldn't let them take that from him. You're a part of this, the figure sneered, its form darkening the very air around them. You cannot escape. Their blood runs through your veins. With a sudden jolt, Solomon felt heat surge from his core, a warmth fueled by purpose. I'm not them, he yelled, his voice suddenly stronger. The garden reacted, flowers quivering as if in agreement. I won't be sacrificed. The shadows recoiled, the shrieks morphing into a chorus of confusion, vibrating through him. An unseen energy crackled in the air, a war between light and dark unfolding in that haunting place. Solomon steadied himself, focusing on the flickering light, now shining brighter amidst the encroaching darkness. With every ounce of his strength, he drew from that memory the laughter, the sunshine, and unleashed it towards the figure. I won't let you take her! A blinding wave radiated, crashing against the shadowy being. It screeched, a sound filled with rage and agony as the light pierced the lingering darkness. Solomon felt the very ground tremble beneath him, the world shifting. Was he winning? No! No! The figure howled, its twisted expression revealing a primal fear that struck Solomon's heart with terror. You cannot defy your destiny. You are meant to bury what is left. But the light surged, an unstoppable force ripping through the shadows that encased him. Solomon could see beyond the figure now. Grim faces formed and dissolved in flashes of light, glimpses of the tortured souls it embodied. They were lost, pulled into vengeance without hope of escape. Not like that! He shouted, voice steady despite the chaos. I'll break this cycle! The shadows writhed, coiling and snapping, desperate to regain control. Solomon pressed forward, determined as the whispers shrieked in despair. The initial warmth began to cool, though, doubt creeping in. Should he really fight against the shadows or bend to their will? What if you can't save her? They hissed, their voices circling like a dark vortex around him. What if protecting the living means sacrificing the dead? The garden trembled violently as all around him flowers wilted and the light dimmed. A sickening chill gripped him as reality seemed to warp. Could he really save them all? Would his refusal to embrace the darkness cost him everything? Solomon clutched his chest, heart racing with the burden of choice. He could feel Grace slipping away as shadows crept closer, threatening to claim him. The weight of it all pressed down, the fear reopening his wounds as he fought to retain clarity in the clamor of despair. The figure laughed cruelly, a sound that twisted his gut with dread. What now, Solomon? Time is running out. Decide, do you want vengeance or love? Amidst the swirling chaos and indecision, the shadows loomed closer, revealing glimpses of those lost in suffering, their faces a mirror of his own spiraling fear. Would Solomon choose to wield the power of wrath, or could he muster the strength to shield grace from this curse? And as the echoes of the past clawed at his resolve, a single question hung in the air like a lightning bolt. Could the darkness within him become his salvation, or would it swallow him whole? The final push was coming, and with it the decision that could shatter his very soul. The ground shook beneath Solomon's feet as the shadows pressed forward, a thick wave of despair crashing over him. Each heartbeat echoed like a war drum, the relentless pounding synchronizing with the chaos surrounding him. He could almost feel the darkness clawing at his skin, drawing closer, more sinister with every breath. "Choose!" the figure spat, a grotesque smile twisting its features. "You speak of breaking cycles, yet you hesitate. You know the power is yours to claim." The contours of its body flickered, as if reality itself were struggling to contain such malice. Arms trembling, Solomon shut his eyes. In that instant, he remembered the warmth of Grace's laughter, the soft way she whispered his name. They had shared secrets and dreams. She was light in his darkest moments. How could he let the shadows warp that? But doubt sank in like a stone, heavy and cold. What if he couldn't break free? "No!" he shouted, forcing his eyes open, confronting the pulsating void. "You don't own me!" With that defiance, he concentrated, calling forth the light, the warmth he had buried deep within. It flickered first, a small candle flame quaking in the tempest of shadow. The figure screeched, its form writhing and twisting as Solomon harnessed his fear, his sorrow, igniting a fire fueled by desperation. From his core, he pushed outward, the light expanding, colliding with the encroaching darkness. He could hear the suffering within the shadows screaming, unrelenting. "Let them go!" he cried, his voice lifting above the howling chaos. Each word was a hammer striking against the anvil of fate, determined to forge a path away from despair. For a moment, the shadows recoiled, and he saw fleeting images, flashes of their tormented souls. They writhed as if caught between two worlds, crying not just for vengeance, but for release. Power surged within him at the urgency of their plight, blending with his love for grace. "Please," Solomon yelled into the void, voice cracking under the strain, "let them find peace." With one final surge, he thrust the light forward. It exploded in a brilliant burst that electrified the night. The garden erupted in radiance, the darkness shrieking in protest as it struggled against the tide of light engulfing it. Shadows began to unravel, swirling into nothingness like smoke caught in a gale. It was beautiful and horrifying. But there was a cost. Solomon felt his energy draining, the light threatening to dim as the darkness fought back with a desperate ferocity. The figure's laughter rang out, twisting and shrill. "You think this will save her? You'll lose everything!" "No," he shouted back, the defiance in his voice stronger than before. "I will not let you take her from me." He focused on Grace's face, the glimmers of love that fought back his despair. With every ounce of strength remaining, he summoned the essence of hope, pushing it outwards like a shockwave. The shadows whirled, howling in agony, and for a heartbeat he caught a glimpse of their feeble humanity beneath the rage, a flicker of lost souls that wanted peace. "By their suffering I will forge something better," he declared. The light expanded violently, exploding outward in a vortex of clarity. The ground quaked, petals of dying flowers erupting to life, vibrant colors erupting in defiance against the approaching dark. But just as it seemed victory was within reach, a chilling gust swept through. and Solomon faltered. The figure lunged forward amidst the chaos, its desperation palpable. "You're making a grave mistake. Surrender or lose. Everything! Choose!" Fear gripped Solomon like a vice, and he shuddered at the desperation in the figure's voice. Panic clawed at the edges of his mind. Would he lose more than just hope? Would he lose himself in the struggle? As the shadows converged with renewed force, he could almost feel an icy hand gripping his heart. Solomon stood at the brink, pulsing with energy, but also with dread. In the stirring tempest, he had to make a decision. For love, for vengeance, for the peace of the agonized souls battling within the shadows. Would he step into the unknown, or would he fracture under the weight of choice? The figure lunged again, and Solomon braced himself for the confrontation as the air thickened with a delicious, horrifying tension, culminating in his absolute choice. What would he decide when the shadows cast their final blow? A blinding flash consumed Solomon as the light erupted from him, forcing the shadows back with an unbearable intensity. For a moment, silence blanketed the garden. The darkness paused, as if reconsidering its attack. Solomon felt the vibrations of power coursing through him, like molten steel shaping itself into something formidable. But then the figure returned, its wicked laugh slicing through the air, rousing the shadows from their stupor. "You think you're a hero," it hissed, eyes gleaming with malice. "You're a fool. This isn't your fight. It's a cycle, and you're merely part of it." The figure lunged at him again, clawed hands outstretched. Solomon stumbled back, heart racing. The ground shifted beneath him. The light faltered, flickered. Panic gripped his throat, cutting off his breath. He had only seconds to harness it again, to summon the power surging within him. "Grace!" he shouted, as if her name alone could embolden him against the encroaching void. Visions of her swirled in his mind. Her gentle smile, the softness of her hands, the warmth that made shadows tremble in the light of her presence. He closed his eyes, summoning every ounce of love, every memory that brought him joy. The warmth reached out, an undeniable force against the creeping cold. The shadows shrieked, twisting violently, and for every moment of doubt he felt the essence of her love pushing him. "I will save you," he declared with renewed conviction, eyes snapping open. The light surged, an explosion of bright clarity that filled the night air. The figure screamed, a raw, unearthly sound, as it recoiled, the shadows dissipating for one precious heartbeat. But as quickly as the shadows faltered, they regained strength. The figure smirked, revealing sharp teeth like a predator unmasked. "You don't know what you're fighting for. You're about to lose it all," it rasped, and the shadows began to swirl around Solomon again, absorbing his light, sapping his strength like a parasite. Despair loomed, clawing at his determination. Would he remain steadfast against this vile force? The ground quaked once more, as the air turned fetid, a stench of decay engulfing him. Suddenly, below him, the earth trembled. Violently, cracks formed, exposing dark chasms that writhed with shadows eager to swallow him whole. Solomon's heart raced, and where seconds before he had been ready to embrace the light, fear seeped into his thoughts. "This is it," the figure taunted, teeth glinting maliciously. "Accept your fate. You can't win." "No!" Solomon shouted defiantly. He felt the warmth of Grace's love push back against the tide of shadows, bolstering his resolve. "I won't let you take her from me. I will break this cycle." A deafening roar erupted as the light burst forth, ripping apart the darkness. It was a desperate gamble, his last stand against the abyss. The shadows writhed and screamed, voices intertwining in agony. Solomon was the eye of the storm, standing amidst the chaos unleashed from every tortured soul ensnared in this hellish trap. But just as the light threatened to submerge the darkness, a whispering swirl of despair passed through him, chilling his soul. "You will never know peace," it echoed, and in that moment a chilling realization struck him. What if he failed? What if the shadows were biding their time, waiting to consume everything he held dear? He staggered, reeling from the weight of revelation. The figure leaned in, its breath a cold wind against his neck. "Make your choice. Join me, or lose her forever." A chilling laughter echoed around him, swirling like a tempest. Solomon gritted his teeth, heart racing against the rising tide of despair. Could he win this battle, or would the shadows claim everything he fought for? The final stand awaited him, the truth lurking beneath the surface, ominous and unfathomable. Would he step into the light, or would darkness cradle him in its clutches forever? As he faced his enemy, the world around him shifted, the ground trembling with uncertainty. The moment was here, the brink of a choice that could change everything. Was he truly ready to confront the depth of his own fears? Would he sink or rise against the shadows once and for all? The storm of shadows swirled violently around Solomon, their relentless claws reaching for him like starving beasts. He could feel the cold grip of despair pressing hard against his heart. The air became suffocating, and panic threatened to swallow him whole. But just as he felt the weight of hopelessness bearing down, a flicker of warmth ignited within him. Grace, his beloved daughter, lending him strength from beyond the curtain of darkness. "Grace, I'm coming," he shouted, his voice ringing with renewed determination. With every ounce of love he could muster, he focused on her face, her laughter, the joy that filled his heart. The shadows recoiled, momentarily confused as light flared up again around Solomon, illuminating the grotesque figure before him. "You won't take her," he cried, the very foundation of his voice shaking the air. The figure's malevolent laughter echoed ominously, but it faltered for a heartbeat just as the light enveloped Solomon. The darkness bent back, shrieking and twisting, but like a tide, it rolled forward again as the figure regained its composure. "Fool, you'll lose everything! You'll drown in your own light!" The end of its words was punctuated by a terrible scream that made Solomon's blood freeze. But he held firm. He had stood on the precipice of despair and decided. He would not be the puppet in this macabre play. With deep breaths, Solomon dug into his core, intertwining his grief with love, fueling an unwavering resolve. Suddenly, the shadows shot forward, their grasp tightening around him, dragging him toward the abyss. But in that instant, he remembered the faces of those wronged, the painful past filled with screams and silence. "Enough!" Solomon roared, launching forward. He summoned the light, the warmth tenaciously growing brighter, melding into a force that was no longer merely for vengeance, but for healing. "All you've done is lie. You're not just suffering souls, you're deceivers. You twist love and grief into weapons of hate." The garden throbbed in response, the flowers trembling as if acknowledging the truth in his words. Solomon thrust his arms wide, calling forth the memories of Willow Creek, the love that thrived amid darkness, and tied them to the flickering light within. "Justice does not mean blood. You seek to destroy hope, but I will forge a different path." The shadows screamed in protest, yet the blinding light surged forth, an unstoppable force pushing back against the onslaught of darkness. Spirals of energy collided, light feeding off love, while shadows swirled, desperate to claim their prize. In a torrent of strength, Solomon felt the familiar tug on his heart. Was it Grace? Her essence stirred within him like wind through the leaves. "Please," she whispered, a beguiling echo woven through the conflict. "Fight!" He surged forward, light bursting from his palms, the shadows snapping wildly like whips, searching for purchase. The garden erupted with vibrancy, colors blinding against the grief, beauty against the wreckage. The very fabric of decay began to heal, flowers blooming where darkness once clung like a plague. "Let them go!" he cried, and the ground heaved in response, shadows writhing and faltering as the defeat breathed through him. "You've kept them chained long enough." The noise grew deafening. The light pulsed violently as Solomon focused all his energy, pulling from every moment of love he had ever shared. The figure twisted in fury, realizing that Solomon's heart was not only a beacon, but a fortress. As the darkness began to buckle, he heard the anguished cries transform, despair now mingling with relief. With one mighty surge, Solomon released the light, shattering the shadows with an echoing crack. The air thickened with a different energy, pulsating with hope and the promise of renewal. A blinding wave surged forth, consuming the darkness around him, twisting each tortured visage into echoes of freedom. And then quiet settled upon the garden. A heavy stillness blanketed the air, and Solomon fell to his knees, breathless yet triumphant. Slowly, the remnants of anguish drifted away, leaving behind the outlines of the freed souls. The figure, once looming and fierce, dissolved into the ether, fading into a whisper of its own regret. Just then, the light began to flicker, a soft glow flaring in the distance. And there she was, Grace, emerging from the shadows with the warmth of sunlight enveloping her. "Daddy!" She ran to him, her arms stretching wide, and he enveloped her in a fierce embrace. The worry that had gnawed at him vanished in an instant, replaced by an overwhelming love that filled the void. They stood together amid the garden transformed, sunlight streaming down as flowers blossomed anew, painted in hues richer than before. The air was fragrant with a sense of peace, weaving through the remnants of their pain. They had faced the darkness, together, and survived. "Let's go home," Solomon whispered, heart full as he held Grace close. And as they walked hand in hand toward the light, the ghosts of their past lingered like a gentle breeze, their whisper a promise of peace, of vengeance fulfilled not through blood, but through redemption. Willow Creek had a long way to heal, but in that moment Solomon knew the cycle of suffering had ended. Alongside him stood the hope of tomorrow, shining bright. As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting a golden glow over the garden, he felt the warmth of the lives they saved wrap around him, a reminder that light will always find a way. Now it's time for you to join the journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Your voice matters. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Your engagement is the heartbeat of this community. Let's keep the adventure going together.